Among the great and good men of this dispensation is Charles Colson Rich. He was born in 1809 in Big Bone, Kentucky, the same year and the same state as Abraham Lincoln. Through his letters and those of his wives, we're going to learn something of the character of this man.
Some wonder why I would break with the conventions of the day and accept plural marriage. I deeply loved my husband and my religion. Charles and I discussed the principle of plural marriage and approved of it. Together, we chose the women who would join our family. Everything was shared as equally as possible between the families, food and money, and I was the distributor. As Charles was absent on numerous missions, we, his wives, had to learn to depend on each other for comfort and assistance. And our bonds grew strong.
Now, Sarah, I take pen in hand. You must be careful and not worry yourself. Don't camp out at night. I can't tell you what to do, but if you have it, bring provisions enough to be where you are. You can even tie the cow behind the wagon and bring it along with you. Again, I take pen in hand and drop you a letter. You must manage the affairs as best you can. I have no doubt you will do that, as I have any influence. Be assured that you and the children are in my prayers. Your welfare and such I worry about, and if I have any influence in the presence of the Lord, that you might be blessed. Write the others and let them know of the particulars of the crop and the farm. Live humble, be good, bless the children continually, and tell them I love them.
My cabin was located on Canyon Street, directly in front of First West. I lived there 3 years, and the climate was so cold, it did not agree with me. Mr. Rich did not sell our home in Salt Lake City, and at the end of that time, he moved back to my home, to my great joy and satisfaction. I could not see my husband so often, but he would come to the city and stay a few weeks with me and the children. When the legislature convened, Mr. Rich, being a member of that body, came and spent most of the winter with us. So we had a good time then when the legislature was out. He left us as comfortable as he could and returned to his home in Bear Lake.
Each of the 6 homes had a view of the other 5. Each of the wives and their children had to make do with their 3-room dwellings. The roofs in those days were made from willows covered with straw and a layer of thick sod. And because the sod was on the roofs, the floors were bare ground. Each of the Rich homes had a fireplace with a rock chimney, and it was said that these homes were warm in the winter and cool even in the summer's heat. The logs were not hewn, but they were stripped of their bark, chinked on both sides before they were covered with mud plaster. And it would be several years before the wives had their more comfortable brick homes built.
When the decision was made to replace the log homes, Charles made arrangements to have 2 or 3 of his sons from each family work for men that were skilled in the adobe making, burning brick, quarrying rock, carpentering, and so forth, so they could learn the useful trades and also learn how to construct the new family homes. The sons were paid for their work and materials, so when it came time to build the homes, much of the material they needed was already on hand and paid for. The money for doors and windows was obtained through the sale of a load of Swiss cheese from the Rich family factory, and all of the actual labor was done by the Rich sons.
I loved to sew in Nauvoo. I established a tailoring business and was known as the best seamstress in Nauvoo. Many considered it a privilege to wear clothes from the Graves shop. When Charles and his wife accepted the principle of plural marriage, they sat down and discussed who they would like to have join their family circle. After prayerful consideration, their first choice was the best seamstress in Nauvoo. We were married January 6th, 1845.
While I was in England, I dropped Eliza a note about having to buy a new suit. And, I'd take one of her suits any day over the best tailors in England. And the reason I'm not wearing it today is it's my P-Day.
Sarah Jane and I shared a 3-room home in Centerville for 17 years. We shared the kitchen, and each of us had our own bedroom and sitting room either side of the kitchen. Here in Paris, we had our own cabins. With no other resources to rely upon, we provided for our families with what we could make ourselves. We made clothes from the wool that we carded and spun and finally knitted. From an Indian woman, we learned how to use leather and were able to make our own leather products to use during the winter. Our food came from our gardens, field, and the animals. We often ground the flour for bread and for ourselves. Furniture for our homes was made by the men. Our homes were lit by candles that we made.
Across First West, where the cabin of Eliza Ann stood, was the home of Sarah Jane Peck. Eliza was in poor health, and she moved in with her daughter before the brick homes were built.
I am glad and thankful so far that I know that there is kind and friendly feelings amongst you, and I hope and pray that this spirit and feeling may increase among you until you are as one, as the Church of God is one. Still, no principle can be presented to live in your bosoms unless it is pure as the heavens is pure. When that time comes, your happiness will be eternal. I feel thankful to the bishop and all of the brethren and sisters who take an interest in your welfare.
I loved knitting and became an expert knitter and made many articles of clothing for the family. I loved making warm quilts and dyed the material with wild herbs. I also raised a garden and was more than willing to share with my neighbors.
Sarah Jane was a natural homemaker, and because of her hospitality and kindness, her home was a gathering place for the young people who were always welcome there. The hills behind her home was the place where the family went sledding. She did not seek praise or recognition, but was always content to stay in the background.
I had 11 children, and only 3 outlived me. Contention was something that Charles was always counseling against. He said in a letter from Leeds, England on April 5, 1861, "I trust all things will be well at home, and that all will do the best they can, and above all live in peace. Let that spirit and principle be continually cultivated, for it is right and will make happiness. Contention is that principle that destroys, and whatever such a principle is, sorrow will follow." I mention this because I feel that I wish this principle continually practiced in my family. This principle will make home happy, but the contrary would make home miserable, and that would want to get away from home. I hope you will not take offense at these suggestions, as they are made in kindness.
Charles built a large log barn and corral between the homes of Harriet and Sarah Jane, and there were a series of footpaths that went between the barn to all the various homes. Now, the older boys came regularly to the barn to help with the milking and the feeding of the cows and the care of the horses. And after a day's work in the fields or elsewhere, the barn was a general meeting place and a hive of activity. Each wife had her own cows from which she obtained milk and made butter, and the pigs, chickens, and beef cattle also contributed to the general larder. The boys and girls worked and played together, and there was love and respect among them.
Further south from Eliza's cabin was the home of Emmeline Grover. Emmeline was the second oldest of 6 daughters, and when their mother died, they were all under the age of 12. Emmeline had an ambitious and independent nature, and she found employment in the homes of Nauvoo. When she was only 9, she did general housework during the weekdays to earn money for her clothes.
My father was one of Joseph Smith's bodyguards, and thus the prophet's father gave me a blessing, promising me a large family and that I would become a noted nurse and woman's physician. Brigham Young later sent me apart to administer to the sick and to act as a nurse and midwife. These blessings were literally fulfilled. When the time came for the rich families to move west, I was working for them. General Rich called a family council, and it was decided that Charles C. would like to take me as his fifth wife. Yay! So that very day, I mounted a horse, yeehaw, behind Charles C., and we rode to Nauvoo, the temple. We were married by Heber C. Kimball, February 2nd, 1846. Now I need to go do some midwifing. See you later.
One of my favorite sayings is, I shall be the best I can be in all things. To Sarah D., I wrote, I would be glad if I had more means to do the good that I would like to, but I'm in a tight place now. And at this time, I don't know how I'm going to see my way through it. I did not bring $1 from Salt Lake with me, and it's only a few days till we have to meet our payments. And where it will come from, I don't know. If we fail, I shall be flat in the country. I can say only that I wish you the best you can, and I'm doing the best I can. I send my love.
Concerning the children, his saying was always, first, be sure that you are governed by right principles, then govern the children by them and you, and they will all be blessed.
This empty lot here is where the cabin of Eliza Ann stood. Further to the south on the corner of First West and Canyon Street is the home of Mary Ann Phelps.
And action.
My husband secured a little log cabin for each of his wives. A dirt floor, no doors, and small holes for windows. The frost came and destroyed our vegetables, and our wheat did not get ripe. My children got the measles. Many wanted to leave, but after 2 years, the climate moderated, and we began to build grist mills and sawmills, made ditches and put up fences, surveyed towns, and began to build comfortable homes. When our sons grew up, they burned lime and made brick to help build homes for their mothers. Our log cabin was a model of homespun efficiency. There were home woven carpets on the floor, small paned glass windows. The chinked logs were smoothly plastered with sand and lime and whitewashed spotlessly clean. The homemade furniture, which we had added to the few things we had brought from Utah, as well as woolen quilts made from the wool of our own flock of sheep. This enabled us to be reasonably comfortable. Manufactured goods were also being brought in from the valley by wagons, and there were suitable fabrics for clothing, curtains, and other items. It was a simple, brave, and wholesome life.
Another of Charles C. Rich's early and most important enterprises in Bear Lake Valley was the first mill at the mouth of Paris Canyon. Here the boys also worked and played together and saw the settlers from every part of the valley bring their wheat and haul away their bran and flour, and perhaps chat a few minutes with the owner of the mill if he happened to be present. The mill was a big rectangular building perched on the side of the hill like an ogre's castle. It had numerous small paned windows coated with dust. Its rumbling machines drowned out the rippling song of the creek below. The water wended its way down through the dark penstock and turned the wheel at the bottom, which caused the heavy stone burrs to grind the wheat and made the rest of the machinery operate.
As well as being occupied with their homes and their families, the rich women devoted a share of their time to church service. Both Eliza Ann and Harriet were first counselors in the Relief Society in Paris.
This is a letter to my dear wives, those that are here, Eliza, Sarah Jane, Mary Ann, Emmeline, and Harriet. I'm going to get a little preachy, girls. Do you enjoy the Holy Spirit? Do you pray? Do you teach our children to pray? Do you see that no unholy principle that would destroy them has suffered to grow in their minds? Do you attend meetings faithfully? Do you cultivate love for each other? Do you love and remember an absent husband? I trust that you remember all of these things and many more. Time with me or distance has never lessened home or friends. When I bow down before the Lord, I ask Him for any blessings, and that blessing is always embracing my wives and myself. How is it with you? Do you feel as I do on these matters? Sending my love.
Directly across First West on the corner of First West and Canyon Street is my home. I am Harriet Sargent, the sixth wife. I had been working with the Rich household, helping out with household chores and children. I was considered a beautiful young girl. I was about 15 years old. One day, Brother Rich required of me what I thought about plural marriage. I told him that I believed it to be right. Otherwise, it would not have been revealed to the prophet. He asked if I had ever thought of marrying in polygamy, to which I replied, I had not. He explained his reason for asking was that 2 of the brethren had requested him to sound me out, each of them wanting to marry me. They had come to him as the presiding officer at Mount, Iowa, and also because I was a member of his household. One of these men later became the president of the church. Time passed and nothing more was said on the subject. The family moved to winter quarters to prepare to the journey to Salt Lake City. Again, General Rich approached me on the subject. I replied, if I am going to marry into polygamy, I would rather marry you, Brother Rich. We were married at winter quarters on March 28, 1847, and I became the 6th and final wife.
Harriet became expert at dyeing yarns into varied colors, using logwood for black, willow leaves for green, etc. When she wanted a rag carpet for her floor, she and her daughter, Caddy, knitted socks and sold them for enough money to buy warp for the carpet. Then they cut the rags, sewed them together, and wove them into carpet. She often sat up late at night spinning yarn or weaving it into cloth. As they dropped off to sleep, her children remembered her clear, sweet voice singing to the hum of the spinning wheel or the clock of the loom.
Your hearts will swell, all is well, all is well.
This is a letter to my girls, as the plural wives were called. First, I am thankful that I have a son who has reached manhood and then takes this course so that I might have the privilege of knowing that he would be an example to his younger brothers. And again, I feel thankful that many more little ones will take the same course as they watch with care, and I expect they will be. This part of preaching is for you to do. I expect you to faithfully discharge all of these duties. Be assured of this one thing, that all that is left undone when it ought to be done is past and out of our reach. I hope this will never be before you. We are now laying the foundation for happiness and greatness, or for misery. Who can blame me for having care and great anxiety? No one that has knowledge. May the blessings of heaven rest upon you, one and all, is my constant prayer. I send my love.
I was the oldest son of Charles and Sarah Dean. While I only had 6 months of formal schooling, I was a telegrapher, lawyer, and judge. I also enjoyed writing. I was well known for my writings in history, humor, and wit. I operated a store in Paris and utilized my trade connections to create fun for the community. I bought a special ink that could only be read after heat was applied. With it, I wrote scriptural messages on a certain brown hen's egg. Soon the entire community gathered to see what the hen had to say about the latest gossip in the village. Contention is of the devil. Families are forever. Men are that they might have joy. Forgive, forgive, forgive. When Father returned from Salt Lake City and observed the situation, he called a special priesthood meeting. To the assembled brethren, he explained that he had just returned from visiting Brigham Young and had been informed that God was still speaking to the prophet. The Lord, said Rich, had not yet resorted to the hind end of a hen. He revived an old legend of a monster in the lake, and soon many of the settlers were seeing fantastic monsters coming out of the lake or swimming in it. This is how the Bear Lake monster, or monsters, came about. At one time, there were sightings of 10 different creatures. These reports of the Bear Lake monster came 65 years before the famed Loch Ness monster. All these monsters were created and funded by me and supported by the settlers and even general authorities.
Taken all together, the Rich family presented a picture of polygamy that functioned harmoniously. Margaret C. Rich listed the reasons for this harmony as follows. In the first place, the first wife fully consented to, yes, even selected the women to be added to the family circle. In the second place, all recognized Sarah D. as the head and director of the wives. She always referred to them as the girls. And then again, Charles C. Rich was a wise and considerate man. Justice and fairness were among his virtues.
In 1880, Mr. Rich suffered a stroke of paralysis. The doctor ordered him to Salt Lake, and Emmeline and I went with him to take care of him. After 4 months, we returned to Paris, bringing him with us. And for 2 more years, he was helpless. I could never see the beauty of polygamy, and I saw it then, for no one wife could have taken care of him as well as we did.
After Charles' stroke, he spoke with the eldest sons of the various families and made an equitable division of his property. Later, the sons of Mary Ann and Emmeline built new barns and corrals on the lots owned by their mothers. Meanwhile, the sons of Sarah and Harriet divided the old barn and corral so that each family had half. Other properties, including land, livestock, shares in the grist mill, etc., were also divided, and each wife with her children henceforth became an independent economic unit. Impressively, the spirit of love and fellowship always remained among the descendants of Charles C. Rich, who died November 17, 1883.